Yeah, good. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وعلى آله الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه الطيبين ومن استنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. So we begin as we should and as we always do with the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the especially merciful. We ask him and him alone to send his peace and blessings on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu on his pure family, his good companions, and all of those who would attempt to follow in their footsteps until the day that we meet our Creator. Allahumma ameen. And brother, may Allah have mercy on you. I'm going to have to ask you, do not turn your back to me. Please, if you can, turn around. Matter of fact, just go on ahead and just scooch up in there. Please and thank you. All right. So, as I mentioned before I left out, we're going to be talking about essentially the collection of the Quran, the story of how the Quran was compiled. And why are we discussing and talking about this? Is because, like all of you, I grew up never having been told how the Quran was compiled. How was it put together? How was it preserved? But same, like you, I was put in Duksi, I was in Madrasa, probably since I was 9, the age of 9, right? All the way up until I moved out when I was 17, right? I had, in one way or another, in some shape or form, had been in Duksi or Madrasa with all kinds of different teachers. I had teachers from Syria. I had teachers from Pakistan. I had sheikhs from, obviously, Somalia, from Ethiopia, right? I had sheikhs even later on, once I did start seriously studying, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt. I had a sheikh who was teaching me Tafsir from Mauritania, from Burma. Yeah, I think that's it. But, right, never once did anybody say, like, this is how the Quran was preserved. This is what happened. There's bits and pieces here and there, right? Bits and pieces of that information, but never like as a consistent, like, this is the whole thing. And Sudais, why is that significant? Why is it important for you to know? Because somebody might say to you, well, where's the original Quran? Where is it right now? The first Quran ever. Somebody might say to you, how do you know that that's the real Quran? That's the real book, that was given to or revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How do you know what you have right now? Right? I don't know about you all, but I've definitely been asked that question. Right? I've been asked that question by, non-Muslims who were acquaintances or whatever. And to be honest, that's a good question. How do you know? How do you know that the Quran that you spend your Saturdays and Sundays for however many years trying to memorize, reading over and over again, and then outside of Saturday and Sunday in Ramadan, read, right? Or at the very least, listen to in its entirety or most of it, that you have to read at least some portions of it on a daily basis, right? On a daily, even if you don't go to Duksi, because you would have to pray, right? You got to pray 5 times a day. Assuming that the bare minimum you're praying 5 times a day, you have to use what in the salah? You got to use the Quran. So how is it you read that on a daily basis, right? It would make sense that you would know, right, how that the story of that book and how it came together. Y'all understand that? And so that being the case, last year, when I was asked to teach a Tafsir class, or excuse me, a few years ago, I was at another masjid, and I was like, you know what? And they were actually younger than you all. I want to say they were like 12, 13 years old. I was like, you know what? This is probably important for them to hear too. because it gives us confidence and an understanding as to how this book is protected. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun. That it is us who have sent down and revealed this book, and it is us who have taken the responsibility to preserve it, i.e. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he says us, he's referring to himself in the royal plural, or the royal we. When he says, we are the ones who sent it down, it's just talking about Allah. It's not talking about multiple, right? Just so that's clear. But he's saying, I'm the one who sent it down, and I will protect it and preserve it. I'll tell you, what are the means, the material, worldly means, how the Quran is protected and preserved? So we'll talk about that. And then next, we'll talk about tafsir, or what's known as usul al-tafsir. And then, which is like the way and the methodology on how the Quran is interpreted and understood, right? Which is different from translation. All right. Again, this is all important because it's supposed to give you confidence in what you're doing, confidence in what you're learning, confidence in the book that any sheikh would come here and tell you, you should live your life by that book, that your parents would tell you, you should live your life by that book, that we would hope you would think and reflect on your own, and you would think like, this is a book that I want to live my life by, that I want to take it as like my GPS in life, right? And in order for you to have the confidence to even make that decision on your own personally, it would make sense that you know the story. I hope that's clear. Does that make sense, y'all? Yes, no, maybe so. I do, by the way, and I should have mentioned, I don't think I did before, if I ask you all questions, I do need an answer. It's very, very important, all right? So is that clear for y'all? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, tell you. Yes, Sudesh.
You know, COVID, there was a guy that made like a fake surah and posted on YouTube.
Yeah, excuse me, no. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
On the story.
Okay, yeah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he do? What does he do in the Quran? He challenges them to do that. He challenges them to come up with something similar or comparable to the Quran. One ayah, one verse, or the entire book, right? So if you look in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The meaning is, right, if it is that you don't believe in my servant, then bring, right, something similar to it. And they will never be able to do so. Try to bring something like it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenges them. And when we say challenge them, we mean the Quraysh, right? And he says, but they'll never be able to do so. And so that's to be expected, that people would try to make an attempt, right? Tell you. But before I go on, Sudais, real quick. The beauty and one of the miraculous ways that the Quran is preserved. If someone was to say, this is from the Quran, and they were faking it, right? What is the simplest way that we could get somebody to refute them?
Just ask the Hafiz.
Just ask the Hafiz, right? And are there only adults who are Hufaz?
No.
Who could we bring? Anybody to bring, just to show how unequivocally wrong this person is. Not even an old person. Who could we bring? We could bring a little kid. And this shows the miraculous nature of the Quran. And most likely, Sudais and everybody, would that kid even speak Arabic?
No.
They don't even speak Arabic. But they might even know multiple qira'at, different modes of recitation. They could read that one ayah or that one, the entire Quran in different modes. And if that person was to make one harakah of a mistake, if he was to change something from fatha to kasra, or from kasra to dhamma, or ghunna, or idgham bighayri ghunna, like a 9-year-old kid could be like, what are you talking about? No, that's wrong. Ghalat, khata, right? And this shows the miraculous nature of the Quran. This is part of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves and protects the Quran, is through the chests of men and women. Through the chests and men of women, that they memorize the Quran. And again, how miraculous is that? Many of them don't speak Arabic. On multiple occasions, world competitions, little girl from some village in Pakistan, 10 years old, wins the world competition. There are how many Arab countries that's their home, mother tongue and language, and some little girl she may not even be able to read in her own language, but she's hafiz the Quran or hafidah of the Quran, and she can come and win an entire world competition. How can that be except that that's a miracle, right? Now,
Like everything that you feel like, isn't it like where see, because some of them have to have new passage for like each generation. So for us, we still.
no, that's a good question. We'll answer that right now. By starting, inshallah. So the first thing is the collection of the Quran. First of all, what is tafsir? This is going to be a tafsir class. So what is tafsir? The word tafsir in Arabic is used to mean the explanation of the Quran. So you should be writing down. You should be writing down. Tafsir means explanation. Tafsir means explanation of the Quran. Right? Tafsir means explanation of the Quran. And the science of tafsir is called usul al-tafsir. The science of tafsir is called usul al-tafsir. So what you want to write now is, after write tafsir means explanation of the Quran, under that, usul al-tafsir. What is usul al-tafsir? It is the fundamental rules and information necessary for the correct understanding of the Quran. What does usul al-tafsir mean? It is the fundamental rules and information needed for the correct understanding of the Quran. All right? So what we're talking about right now, when we're talking about the collection of the Quran, etc., it's under usul al-tafsir. Right? And so in this part of usul al-tafsir, we're going to be looking at how the Quran was compiled. And we start with the era of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, naturally, right? That's where the story of the Quran starts. Right? And if you look at in Sahih Bukhari, and it's narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, revelation coming to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually started 6 months before the encounter that we know of with him and the Archangel Gabriel in the cave of Hira. And how that happened is, and there's a chapter titled The Beginning of Revelation in Sahih Bukhari, or Bad'ul Wahi. In it, she says that for the duration of 6 months, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to have dreams. And in those dreams, right, and when those dreams would occur, he would wake up the following day, and whatever he saw in his dream would happen in front of him, right? Exactly how he saw it in the dream. And that was kind of like a preparation for what was to come. That was like a preparation for what was to come, right? Fast forward though, and then what happened, y'all? When was the first encounter with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Archangel Gabriel, and what happened? Yeah, could you maybe raise your voice, sister? Okay, so he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Iqra, to recite or to read. Okay, what else? What do y'all have y'all not heard this story before? Sudais, have you never? I'm asking all of you. I'm asking all of you now. So I need all of you to respond. Yes or no. Have you heard the story of the first time the Prophet ﷺ encountered the Archangel Gabriel? So some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay. For those of you who said yes, you have. What do you know? Tell me. Sudais, I heard you say yes. What do you know?
That he left the angel
Okay, quick, hold on a second, okay? Who can say, what was he even doing in the cave in the first place? There was a few people who said yes, so I know some of y'all know. All right, what was he even doing in the cave in the first place? Yes, sister. I'm sorry, 1 second. So to remind everybody, when we talked about respect, right now, the only person who should be talking is that sister right there. That's it. Nobody else should be talking. We should respect her voice, her input, and what she's got to say. She offered, she has the floor. Nobody else should be talking. Not only should you not be talking, everybody should be listening to her. Everybody should be listening to her. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sister. Yes. So the Prophet ﷺ, Jazakallah khair, sister. Thank you. So he did what? Actually, in his time, he didn't believe in what the people were doing, worshiping idols, etc. He's 40 years old, right? And during that period, when he turns 40, it's mentioned that he wanted to start going on, like, you could say, like a spiritual retreat, where he would go away outside of the city, up into the mountains, and specifically the cave of Hira. That's where he would go. And today, that cave is known as, it's on the mountain that it's on. People call it Jabal An-Nur. That's not what it was called during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but people call it that now. The mountain of light. And if you've never heard this story, I wonder if you should be writing these things down. I wonder if you should be writing these things down. Huh? You don't have to write every single word, but important things. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ meets the angel Jibril, mountain of light, cave of Hira, right? These are like basic note taking, right? For the most part, either y'all are in junior high school or high school. This is a skill you need to have, not only in Ma'had, you should have that skill for school. You're all students, right? You got to be, and you got to know how to write shorthand. You take the information I'm giving you, what's the most important, catching that and leaving the rest. And I'll try as best I can to point out what's needed and what's not, all right? I'll tell you. So he leaves, goes to that cave. And how old was he, y'all? How old was he, y'all? He's 40 years old. That's the first time ever, right? And when he comes, sister, what did you say? The angel Jibril did what? Not only did he tell him to read, understand this, he embraced him, like hugged him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, he squeezed me so hard that I thought I was going to pass out. He squeezed me so hard. Hatta balagha minni shudda. Right? He said it was so much like I thought I was going to die. Then he tells him, Iqra. Let me ask you a question. If he squeezed him like that, what do you think was the benefit of the angel Jibril alayhi salam squeezing Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam like that? What would be the benefit of that? Like us looking back now, backwards at the story and or that event and what happened, what would be the benefit of that for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How about this? Y'all ever seen when somebody's not sure if they're dreaming or not? What do? I know. What do people do? Like, have y'all ever seen that before? They like pinch themselves. Is this real? Is this really happening? Right? So now, and this is important because we don't want to say later on, the Prophet ﷺ was having a dream. The Prophet ﷺ was having a seizure. The Prophet ﷺ was sick. The Prophet ﷺ was possessed. Because those are all things that later on people in an attempt to try to discredit Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or to slander him, or to dissuade others from Islam. These are things that people would say. So now, one of the things we benefit is to know that it was what? That it was real. That, right? This, no, you're not going crazy, Prophet Muhammad. This is really happening. It happens once. And he says, Iqra, recite or read, just like the sister told us. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he responds, Ma ana biqari. I don't know how to read. Again, this is also important. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not know how to write nor read. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not know how to write or read. And the significance of that is that, right, you have this entire book. How could all of that information, how could all of that knowledge, how could all of that news come from somebody who doesn't know how to read or write? And what would even be the significance of that? Well, for one, it would mean he couldn't have copied it and simply plagiarized and written it down from somewhere else, because he doesn't know how to what? Doesn't know how to read or write. So he couldn't have just copied somebody, again, speaking to the miraculous nature of the Quran. Then again, because he doesn't know how to read or write, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the fetus and the development of the fetus, or he talks about the pain that somebody's going to experience, in the hellfire. And one of the things that Allah describes is how someone's skin will be burned until it is nothing, right? And wa'iyadhu billah, may Allah protect us from the hellfire. Have you ever seen a burn victim? Yeah. Y'all ever seen what it looks like? You ever seen even after they're healed and they get a skin graft? Do you see what they look like? And by skin graft, they take skin from somewhere else and then cover that other place. They are forever marked, right? Allah musta'an. It is extremely painful. It's one of the worst ways to ever to experience pain. And did you know, right, that the most sensitive and the most present, like, number of pain receptors in your entire body, guess where it is? Guess where it is in your body? In your skin. Now, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing about the hellfire, that people's skin will be burned? Because that's a painful torment. How many times does Allah subhanahu, right? Adhabun alim, a painful punishment. How does the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam know that kind of stuff? How does he know that the mountains, right, serve as pegs, right? And if you look at it, right, it's what helps keep stable, right, tectonic plates, right, which keeps, right, the ground firm and steady, and not always, like, you know what I'm saying, a bunch of like wavy because of the lava under and the magma. Y'all know, I mean, y'all study that in school, right? Right? Where we're just like, the earth is always moving and shifting in earthquakes. The mountain serves as a peg. That's mentioned in the Quran. If he doesn't know how to read or write, how would he know that kind of information? So he couldn't have just copied it or read it from somewhere else. Plus, that information wasn't even known at that time. Second time, Jibril grabs him, squeezes him, says, Iqra. Prophet ﷺ says, I don't know how to read. Ma ana biqari. And again, third time, squeezes him, embraces him, and says what? He says, Iqra. Ma ana biqari. And he says, I don't know what to read or recite. And then the first 5 ayat, not the entire surah, but the first 5 ayat from surah what was revealed? From which surah? From surah what? Surah Iqra, also known as what? No, you might be right. What was it? Oh, no, yeah, you're right. No, not that one. Sudais, what surah? Surah Al-Alaq. Jazakallah khair. Surah Al-Alaq, which means the clot. So not the entire surah, but the first 5 ayat, which are what, y'all? Tell me, what is it? No. Everybody. I said, when I ask a question, I need everybody's response. What is it, y'all? فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. And when you recite the Quran, seek refuge from the shaitan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Everybody, not just one, everybody. Bismillah. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The first 5 ayats. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Right? Until that part. The entire, right? And so, and then obviously after that, the rest is history. The rest is history. All right. Obviously, those are details that we're not going to go into after that, like what happened. Then he ended up going home, you know, confiding into his wife, Khadija radiallahu anha at that time, right? That information, maybe we'll cover at a later time. But what I do want you to know right now, in the era of the Prophet ﷺ, focusing on the story of the Quran being revealed and collected, is that the Quran came in sections. It did not come down as one book. You want to write that down. You want to write that heading, see where it's red, right? If you look, I've marked what I need you to know. The heading, which is always marked in red, and then the green, which is the actual information under that heading. So in the era of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the Quran was not revealed as one book. You need to write that down if you haven't already. The Quran was revealed in parts and pieces over 23 years. The Quran was revealed in parts and pieces over 23 years. Brother, do I got a baby spoon feed you, Akhi? Come on now, brother. No. And essentially what would happen is whenever there was a problem, an issue, right, with the Prophet ﷺ, or they need advice, Allah would reveal ayat. So for example, the Jews came, right, so a group of Jewish people, they came trying and test the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Like, this dude trying to claim that he's a prophet, like he knows some things. All right, we're gonna see what's up. So they ask him about the nature of the soul. And as far as the soul is concerned, nobody knows its nature other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And whatever he reveals to mankind. But the details and whatnot, that is not revealed, all right? So they asked him almost like a trick question. And the idea was, we're going to ask him. If he starts explaining and going into all kinds of details, then this dude is a liar, because only Allah knows. But if he doesn't, then there might be something to what he's saying. And so actually, when they did that, when they tried to test him like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. They ask you, or they come to you asking you concerning the soul and the nature of the soul. And Allah tells him, قُلْ الرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. The soul is from the command of my Lord. So he doesn't go into a bunch of details, essentially making stuff up. He doesn't start making stuff up. All right. My point though is that what? They came and asked a question. There was a need. Quran is revealed. Right. Another example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they asked the Prophet ﷺ about when their wives are menstruating. Are they allowed to be with their wife? Right. And then, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ, right? They're asking you about that. No, you don't go anywhere near your wife when she's menstruating, meaning intimacy, right? Obviously, until she, right, is clean once again. Does that make sense, y'all? Point though is that Quran is revealed when that happens. Similarly, when Aisha radiallahu anha was accused, right, of infidelity, right? Aisha, which is known as Hadithatul Ifk, right? The incident of the great lie, or the great slander, rather. Meaning they made up something about Aisha radiallahu anha, the hypocrites did, accusing her of having cheated on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's a lengthy story behind that, but ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals verses of the Quran, right? Freeing her from their accusations that she did not do what they accused her of, right? And that she is far removed from that, right? Again, the point is what? An event happens, Quran is revealed. And that was over a period of 23 years. And so anytime that something happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send the Archangel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, over a period of time, over 23 years. Now, as far as the preservation of the Quran, again, that's highlighted in red. You should write that down, right? So how was the Quran revealed initially or in the beginning? So first, Mashaykh, the Prophet ﷺ, the angel Jibril, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather, would speak some words. The angel Jibril hears those words, right? And now he comes down to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He comes down to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he would tell him whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Initially, the Prophet ﷺ used to try to repeat, right? And he's trying to memorize it like right away. He's trying to keep up with the angel Jibril. As opposed to just being quiet and focusing and listening to the words. He was trying to do what? As soon as the angel Jibril is telling him, he's repeating like immediately after him, right? If you guys have ever, right, in the time that you've been in Duksi or in Madrasa, right, this usually happens when you're younger and you're not used to learning with a teacher. The teacher will read something, and before he even finishes, you're already trying to read with him. And he'll tell you, stop, be quiet, listen, then repeat after me. Y'all ever experienced that or seen that? Right, where they're trying to read, right? And they're not paying attention because the sheikh's not even finished. This is essentially what was happening with the Prophet ﷺ. And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لا تحرك لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه. Right? Do not move your tongue hastily, right? Because he's trying to learn it. Surely we will collect it and recite it. So when we recite it, simply follow its recitation. Just listen. Don't worry about the memorization part. Allah is going to make sure that you memorize it in your heart. That's what he's telling Prophet Muhammad said that. All right? Play him. So if you were asked, right, how was the Quran initially memorized by the Quran? First, he was trying to repeat after the angel Jibril. Then Allah told him, just listen. We will make sure you memorize it. But just listen right now. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana. We will be the ones to make sure that it's in your heart. All right? And it's very important that the Prophet ﷺ remember everything that he revealed. Why would that be important? Why is it important that he remembers everything that's revealed to him? Yeah.
So he can pass it on.
Good. So he can pass it on. Of course, that makes sense. Why else? Why would it be important for the Prophet ﷺ to remember it right then and there? Yes.
Maybe like if he didn't know it, the people he was trying to impose something and like they wouldn't believe him if he was reading to them and like he didn't remember it or he was like it was like broken up or something.
Right. Also very true. What more practical? What did we say about the Prophet ﷺ? Regarding book. That he what, sister? What do we say about the Prophet ﷺ with regards to books? Yes, you. What did we say about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his relationship to books? He didn't know how to read, and he didn't know how to what? He didn't know how to write. He didn't know how to read, and he didn't know how to write. So it's all the more important for him to memorize what he's saying so that he can later on pass it on to others. Tayyib? All right, good. So, now the Prophet ﷺ, he used multiple means to pass on the Quran and make sure that it was preserved, right? So a question you might be asked, and I would encourage you to write down the question. How did the Prophet ﷺ pass on the Quran? How did the Prophet ﷺ pass on the Quran? All right, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would speak words, the angel Jibril would hear it, then he would come down to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and inform him and tell him what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said. The Prophet alaihi salatu wasalam, he listens attentively as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to do. He said, La tuharrik lisanaka lita. Don't move your tongue. Don't try to repeat it, right, in a fast fashion. Just listen. Inna alayna jama'ahu wa qur'ana, right? فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَ. Just pay attention and listen. So okay, that's him. That's for him. Okay, but how does he pass it on to others? There are 4 things, right? 4 things. Number 1, right, is the salah. Is the salah. How would it be passed on in the salah, y'all? How would it be passed on in the salah? When he's praying together with others. What do you mean? Why Maghrib? Because that's when you read out loud. And how often is that happening? Every day. 5 times. Every day, throughout the day. So they're repeatedly, Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, they're repeatedly hearing the Quran. And remember, it's not unlike us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid us and help us to learn the Arabic language. That's their language. Many of us, all right? So for them to hear something, imagine, and you don't have to raise your hand, right? But I want you to imagine or think of like having memorized a song. Right? Having memorized a song. I'm not asking if you did, I'm not asking if you listen to music. Don't say that. Don't raise your hand. But how many people all the time memorize a whole song? A lot, right? And how is that? Do they actually like look up online and look up the lyrics and sit down and like annotate and like, you know what I'm saying, and highlighter and be like, all right, and then they walk down the hallway and they're like studying and read. How do they memorize it? You're just hearing it over and over and over again. And part of what makes that easy, aside from the repetition, is that it's a language that you understand. And so it makes it easy for you to memorize. Sometimes you might memorize something just because you heard it over and over again and you didn't even want to. You don't even like it. You ever had that where you have like, oh man, I got that song stuck in my head. You don't even like it. You don't even want it there. But the beat is so catchy or whatever, and it's just in your head. Right? So in a similar fashion, them having prayed behind the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it just, right? That's one way that it was passed on, through the salah. And if you're asked, what do you mean through the salah? Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, and them hearing it over and over again. Second thing is that everybody who entered into Islam, they would be taught portions of the Quran. Maybe not in its entirety, but they need at least some of the Quran to do what? Sister in the back with the glasses. What do they need it for? What do you need the Quran for every day? At least some of the Quran. To do what? To be able to pray. So that means everybody has got to learn some of the Quran. Why you do that? Don't do that. Nah. Don't do that. No, he knows who. Don't do that, all right? Yeah. No. I will. I'm gonna bring it back. All right. So they need it for the salah. So everybody was taught a portion. Then next, the Prophet ﷺ, he taught people. You should have studied this hadith last semester. It was narrated by Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh. Said, "Khayrukum man ta'allama al-Quran wa 'allama." The best of you are those who learn the Quran, and not only that, but you teach others. So look at many of the Sahaba, in order to gain that virtue and to be considered from the best of people, to be the best of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? They were engaged in the activity of learning the Quran and teaching the Quran, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, to motivate and inspire them to do this. So that encouraged more people to learn the Quran. Another way that the Quran was preserved, the motivation and inspiration from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then fourthly, is that those people who were able to read and write, they were told by the Prophet ﷺ to write down the Quran, right? Or various sections or portion of it as it was being revealed, right? And then he would tell them, these verses go here, this surah here, like this, right? Because like I said, sometimes it's not all revealed at one time, right? So Surah Al-Alaq, right? The Sahabi, when he's being told, all right, write these 5 down, and then more verses are revealed later, it's the Prophet ﷺ who tells him, this is a part of that surah. Make sure that you write that together, etc. Right? So lastly, those who can read and write, we're told by Prophet ﷺ, record the Quran. Right? Now, I'm sorry, yes.
Like once you memorize the Quran, you couldn't write down like the Quran that you memorized?
Who?
The Prophet.
That's a good question. He asked, once the Prophet ﷺ memorized Quran, could he simply himself, you mean himself, right?
Yeah.
Simply write down the Quran. Who can answer that question? Yes, sister. Could he do that? He couldn't what? So the answer to the question is what? Could he just write it down? No, he couldn't. Why not? Because he doesn't know how to write. And you're right. He could have just learned. Why didn't he just, you know what I'm saying, stop, take some time, almost like some night classes? Why not just go ahead and, you know what I'm saying, remember, just learn how to read and write? But then that would detract from the miraculous nature of him having known this type of information and this type of knowledge. Because then if he learns how to write, that by default, it means he knows how to what? Read. And if he knows how to read and write, then somebody could say plagiarism. Without him even knowing how to read or write, people accuse him of plagiarism now. Oh, that's just you're just copying the Christians and what their story is. Islam is just a knockoff of Christianity and Judaism. People say that right now, even though he didn't know how to read or write. So how are you gonna copy it? You understand? So it's from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's from the divine wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal that the Prophet ﷺ didn't know how to read or write, and yet he still brings an entire book that people, right, are not able to emulate, copy in any way, shape, form, or fashion. They can't reproduce it or anything like it, excuse me. Tell you. And this is the last part, and we'll stop right here, and I'm gonna give you all a 5-minute break. Is how was the Quran written in the time of the Prophet ﷺ if there was no paper? Right? So just so y'all know, in that time, that's more than 1400 and nearly, not quite, nearly 1400 and almost like almost 50 years, if not more, right? But during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, paper hadn't been invented yet in Arabia. They hadn't come across it yet. Okay. So then how did the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, or rather the Prophet ﷺ tell the companions to preserve the Quran? Yes. They would try to write it on whatever they could. So that could be date palm leaves, flat stones, tree bark, right? Like a big old piece of tree bark, right? Wood, dried animal skins, shoulder blades, right? And a shoulder blade, obviously we mean of an animal, like of a sheep or a camel, because it has a wide surface area, all right? So they're gonna write on that. But they would use whatever they could to try to write it down. And this was how they were able to write it in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then, of course, and that's very significant. But then also, since the people entered Islam at various points, at like different points in times, so you had some people who were there from day one, right? They started from the bottom with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like Khadija radiallahu anha, Ali radiallahu anhu, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, etc. They're there from they're the first to become Muslim. Then you had those who became Muslim later on. Umar ibn Khattab, although he's there early on, right? Then you have people who come way later, like Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, right? So different companions knew different amounts of the Quran, and in particular, that they heard it directly from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Not everybody, right, heard the entire Quran directly from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Some might have heard like 2-3 juz. Some might have heard, different portions here and there. But the point, though, is that ultimately, at the end of the day, only a small number or a small group of the Sahaba heard the entire Quran, memorized it directly from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? Most of them memorized portions, but only a small number directly from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. All right, and that's all a part and parcel of how the Quran in the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was preserved. All right, so we're going to stop right there and then continue this part tomorrow. Up until this point, are there any questions?
No.
All right, so now, I told you, don't call me Madden. So I'm going to ask y'all questions now, all right? All right. And think of these questions as being, that's how the homework will be made up. That's how quizzes and tests will be made up. So it makes sense to write these questions down. All right. Number one, and I need you to answer right now for me. What does tafsir mean?
It means explanation of the Quran.
Means the explanation of the Quran. And what is the definition of usul tafsir?
Usul tafsir is the fundamental wisdom on what a person needs to know to be a Muslim on a daily basis.
Nope.
What?
You started off good, you started off strong, and then you went off the rails. So, yes, brother. What is the definition of usul tafsir? Because you should have written it down. I repeated most. So then just read. All you got to do is read it off of your notes. Yes. That's it. All right. Tell you, how was the Quran revealed? And by that, what I mean is, was it revealed as a whole book? If not, then how was it revealed? All right. I'm sorry. Yes. Over a period of 23 years. Now, and then when would that happen? Or why would that happen? Huh? What would cause the Quran to come down? Or well, that's not the cause. Allah is the cause. I mean, he's the one who's speaking it. But when would it happen? Like, what would occur? Yes. He wants to give them advice when there's an event that happens and they need guidance. Something went down. Can we do this? Are we allowed to? Are we not allowed to? Prophet said, remember, he doesn't just say whatever he wants to and do whatever he wants. Islam is not his plaything. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right? وَلَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. That he doesn't speak from his own desires, but rather it is revelation that is revealed to him. So whenever the Prophet ﷺ says something is halal, haram, we can do this, we can't do that, he's not just, that's Allah telling him that. So that's revelation. And he does it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reveal it to him as needed over a period of 23 years. Keep it moving. How did the Prophet ﷺ pass on the Quran? How did he pass it on? Yes, brother. And by the way, you're going to find out about me. I don't just call on people who raise their hands. Sometimes I do, but not all the time, right? That whole, like, if I don't make eye contact with him, maybe he won't call on me. Or if I just, just like this, inshallah. Nah, everybody gets called on. What's up? You, brother. How did the Prophet ﷺ pass on the Quran? I'll even give you a clue. We mentioned 4. And elaborate that. Just the regular old people, huh? Who are those people? What are they called? The Sahaba. No. And they what? And they hear it. Just one time, right? Not just one time? Every day. So it was repeated. Okay, alhamdulillah. Good. That's 1. What's another one? Okay, right. So why would they need to know it? Different portions of the Quran. Why would they even need to know any Quran? Obviously, because it's a book of guidance, but fundamentally, because you needed to pray. You needed to pray. Jazakallah khair. Good. All right, Tayyib. Sister right here. What was another one? Yes, you. Was another way that the Prophet ﷺ passed on the Quran. They just did it because they wanted to? Because he told them. All right. Very important. No. Good. Jazakallah khair. All right. Umar. Yeah, you, Umar. Let me get one. Give me one. Yes. How did the Prophet ﷺ pass on the Quran? Huh? We already had that one. That was this brother right here. What's your name, Akhi? Abdurrahman. Are you hoping that brother next to you is going to tell you, Umar? No. That's okay. If you ask him for help, that's okay. You're not being tested right now, right? So it's all good. Go ahead if you want to ask him. No problem. Well, go ahead, ask him. Look at Umar right now. No, Hamafi pass. But look, Umar. I'm being this. What's up? Huh? Okay, yeah. Let's go. Umar. So right now, you can ask him, because right now it's not a test. It's not a quiz. This is the time to ask. And it's not, so I have no problem. I don't have no problem with you asking him right now. Ask him to. We already said 3. Huh? He's cool. Did you not write down more than one or all 4? No, I'm asking you now, brother. Did you not write down the 4? You didn't? Did you write down the 4? You got 1. Make sure you get all 4. The 4th one is that he motivated and inspired the companions to learn the Quran. Right? Remember that hadith? خيركم. What's the hadith, y'all? خيركم من تعلم القرآن. What's the rest, sister? خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. All right, so I want you to repeat it. خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Ahsanti. Thank you. All right, so now, said that there was no paper during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So how did they record or write down the Quran? If there's no paper, how are they getting written down? Yes, sister. Give some examples. Yeah, flat stones. Yeah. So obviously not just like a rock, like a small rock that's circular or whatever, but something that might be flat, right? Again, you need surface area. All right, what else? Tree bark. And again, not just like something you just chipped off real quick, but like they might use some type of way where they can get a large part of it that's all together, right? So it almost, again, a large surface area. What else? Date palm, yep. Date palm leaves, yep. Good. What else? The shoulder blades of animals, just to be clear. All right. They're not out here plumbing style. Yeah. Dried animal skins. Ahsant. All right, Tayyip. So like I said, we'll stop there. And actually, we don't have a lot of time. We got about a little less than 15 minutes. Yeah, we might not. We don't have time like that. MashaAllah. Next time, inshallah. But no. No, I didn't say that either. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Let's see here. Bismillah.
Yeah.